police officer in Northern Ireland says there's going to be a significant visible policing operation in place ahead of a planned anti-immigration protest and a counter-protest in Belfast. Let's head up there now and speak to our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie. Oh, Dougie, there are lots of people there now.
Oh, there are. There are hundreds of people, but all mainly from the public sector, and absolutely no police in riot gear whatsoever. No tactical support groups are here. They were here last night for the anti-immigration protesters. In fact, it was shocking how many of them there actually were, with snatched Land Rovers, etc. And they were stopping and searching some of those protesters on the way in to the area. And what we are now seeing is the public sector, many of the trade unions, having this protest behind us, and an awful amount of Palestinian flags, gay pride flags. And amazingly, on Friday I seen flags of the NUJ, the National Union of Journalism, where we're meant to be very just straight down the middle on this. So it was quite disturbing to me to see that. But these are people who live in middle-class areas and as yet have not seen illegal immigration. And it's very, very important that we stress this, Darren. People in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland are not against immigration. What they are against is undocumented immigrants coming in to Northern Ireland and being put in those working-class areas. And they are changing the concept of those working class areas. People there I have spoke to at great lengths who do not want to appear on camera because they would be branded racist. This is where we have got to, that you are branded racist if you turn around and just tell the facts of what is happening. Some of these people can't even get their children into local primary schools because there's so many places set aside for immigrants. Some of them, those very people maybe only have one car. The husband works nights, the wife works days, and they are having to drive their children 3 miles up the road to another school. Then they want to have a family support in the area that they grew up. And they're trying to buy the houses in the family that they grew up, but private landlords have bought those houses up and they give them up over to groups such as mayors that then use those social houses that are in the hands of private landlords, including hotels, give them 5-year contracts in them and move in undocumented immigrants into that area. Now, in the last 2 years, I have been in the Republic of Ireland, which really in terms is so far ahead of Britain, not because of the amount of immigrants they have taken, but because of the amount of immigrants per head of population. We are now seeing even middle-class areas kicking back on this and saying, no more. We cannot have any more here. We haven't got the facilities or infrastructure to deal with it. One man I spoke to was a butcher on the canal in Dublin, a beautiful tourist place, is now full of tented villages with drugs, paraphernalia, pornography, drink, human excrement. And those shops that are beside those tents are now closing because, well, they can't get women into the shops to buy stuff because of the amount of it here. So these people from the trade unions, and it is the trade unions, I think haven't just got the grips with those areas that are really being affected.
No, right, yeah, middle-class trade unionists, I've no doubt. But Dougie Beattie, thank you very much for joining me as ever and offering your thoughts there. Ben, I have to put to... Oh, I should introduce you first, Ben. I just assume people know who you are. I'm joined now by my panel, the former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards, and the former deputy leader of the Reform Party, Ben Habib, who I was just about to talk to. Now, Ben, I have to ask you this comment because we saw there the Palestinian flags flown by the trade unionists. You've got the new sort of epilepsy-inducing pride flag that's been waved there.
That's what struck me.
They're saying, one of our viewers, True Brit, says, look, Darren, I'm banging on about this until I'm blue in the face because actually this is all Stonewall's diversity, equity and inclusion. And actually it's that whole agenda that they're putting through universities, hospitals, civil servants, councils. That's the issue here. Do you sort of... Is that the root
I completely agree. I completely agree. This isn't about the far right versus sane people who are counter-protesting. The so-called anti-racist marches are actually infused with prejudice as the way that you've just described it. And as you know from past conversations we've had, in my view, diversity, equity and inclusion is an incredibly prejudiced, divisive, government regulatory... expensive, damaging to the economy. But what it does is give protected status to ethnic minorities and affords them the ability to come out and do what they're doing on the streets and have some kind of cloak of protection against the criminal justice system in the way that they behave. And that's why there's also a feeling of two-tier policing, because of this protective cloak that they have. But the one thing I want to draw viewers' attention to in Northern Ireland, it's a most remarkable thing that the anti-immigration protests have managed to do what 40 years of government policy has failed to do, which is bring together people flying Union Jacks and the tricolour of the Republic of Ireland on the same side. They recognise that it is actually an assault on the island of Ireland that's taking place at the moment with mass immigration and illegal migration. I thought Dougie gave a really good exposition of what was going on. I would disagree with Dougie on one thing. This isn't just about illegal migrants. This is about migration, full stop. Yeah. And the people who joined together to protest are not far right. They are typically the overlooked white working class from deprived areas of Belfast and across the United Kingdom. And they are typically Labour voters. They're not far right.
And on that point, Ben Habib, I've got to bring in Peter Edwards. Now, because one of our viewers, Peter, called Gary, has written in, and Gary says, "Hi, Darren. Please can you try to stop those that are pro-unlimited or pro-mass migration calling people with the opposite view racists and Nazis? It's inaccurate, insulting and insane." That's where we're at with the public discourse at the minute, is it not?
Well, I want to come back. I've heard quite a right-leaning stream of consciousness from Dougie and then views from both of you that I do disagree with quite strongly. I don't understand why Ben takes a view, and Ben and I will disagree on most things, but I don't understand why he takes a view that the Stonewall flag, i.e. in support of gay community or the wider LGBTQ plus community, is, he used the phrase, infused of prejudice. I don't understand that at all. And then coming on to the people who are now in jail...
Can I explain that?
And now coming on to people in jail, to say that they are Labour voters is an absolute nonsense. One can speculate. I think we can all agree they're violent and morons if they're in jail for assaulting mosques or assaulting people. We can agree they're violent.
But do you agree that they're not...
Why are we saying they're Labour voters? There's no evidence of that at all.
But there's more evidence for that, given that they come from deprived working-class areas across the country, than there is to classify them as far-right.
They're at least in Labour constituencies, right? We know that, at least most of them.
Well, so someone who we've said, I'm looking at Times, it could be any newspaper, a guy who's in jail, possibly for assault on police, none of us have met him. Mm-hmm. We don't know what street he lives on. We don't know how he votes. But Ben's saying with confidence that he's a Labour voter.
No, I didn't say that. No, that's not what I said. What I'm saying is that you're absolutely right that we won't know what their political disposition is. And therefore, we cannot classify them as far right. It is extremely divisive and playing dirty politics by the Prime Minister to categorise all those who have a legitimate protest against immigration as far right. He does it in order to rubbish their position. That's what the Prime Minister is doing. And you're rightly saying, Peter, that we don't know what their political ideology is. But what I'm saying is that I agree with you, but if we were to hazard a guess at what their political leaning is, it's probably Labour, because they come from white, working-class backgrounds across the UK, the deprived areas that have been repeatedly promised that they would be levelled up, and what they've seen is immigrants in masses coming into their communities, being put ahead of them on social housing, education, NHS, getting cash in their pockets. All of this is an offence to the white working class man. And just last point, Labour Party has turned its back on its constituency, which is the working class of this country. The Labour Party is infused with some kind of ideological nonsense that it's inherited from the DEI agenda.
All right.
I think that's a rant, and there's too much for me to respond to there. I don't want to just sit here grumbling. I want to make a meaningful contribution, but Ben didn't offer evidence what he's saying. We know that in poorer areas, turnout is lower, full stop. So lots of the people Ben believes are left-wing may not vote at all.
I didn't say that. Ben, I didn't say I believe they're left-wing.
Ben, you've had an awful lot of time to rant away.
Yeah, but you miscategorise what I say, Peter.
Tough luck, it's a debate show. So, I think we all agree the violence is wrong. I would say, there's lots of individuals in the paper today. If someone's convicted and admitted racially or religiously aggravated harassment, there's no evidence at all to suggest that person from the left. I'd imagine if they behave like that, they're probably not voting at all. And then to come to how the Labour government's doing, Labour, like the last government, will be judged on its record in office, and that'll be on house building, the NHS, inflation, all the things that we vote on and care about. But when Labour's been in government for a month, to say, and they've pledged to build more houses, to say immediately that Labour have turned their back on the working class after 5 weeks, I mean, to put it politely, that's a bit daft.
Well, I think it's been going on a lot longer than that, though, Peter, with respect. I think you can go all the way back to Gillian Duffy, you can go all the way back to Tony Blair, and the working class started to move away from the Labour Party. I mean, that's not pure speculation. There is actual evidence.
Well, Labour lost elections, and you need to win working class votes and middle class votes. That's just a fact. But I stress Labour will be judged, and it will be judged harshly on its record over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But to say after 5 weeks, when Labour won and the other parties lost, it's turned back, is just without any evidence at all.
No, it's not without evidence. It's not without evidence. Typical Labour voter the typical Labour historic ideology
what is a typical Labour voter?
The typical Labour ideology of the past was to promote British workers' rights. OK? You do not promote British workers' rights by embracing mass immigration, the foundations for which were put in place by Tony Blair, as Darren rightly identifies. And you do not hold your hand out in friendship to the white working class in this country by categorising all those who are protesting against immigration as far right. This government has turned its back instantly, within 5 weeks, on the working class in this country.
I think this shows the problem with the debate, because Ben is so angry, and we're all entitled to have different views, but every time I come on the show, Ben gets angry and waves his finger at me. I just want to make one point about Wes Streeting, the new health secretary. He said, in the NHS, you're more likely to meet an immigrant as a nurse or a doctor or a cleaner rather than a patient. I thought that was a very pithy summary. He was trying to get to the heart of it and say, immigrants are not jumping the queue. Immigrants are making a massive contribution to public services and the economy. That is valid, and it's completely different talking about illegal immigration. I was worried that Dougie in his summary is merging these two things together, because society needs to treat lawful immigrants who come here to make a contribution very distinctly from illegal immigrants.
Well, yes, but there is still a problem with the assimilation of both, right? Assimilation of both legal and illegal.
Well, if you're illegal, let's park that. If you're illegal, you shouldn't be here. So we don't want to assimilate illegal immigrants. If you're a legal immigrant, there's absolutely a pressure on public services, and you're completely right, whether that's school places, house building is obviously a big, very long-standing one. The other one that really comes up is getting to see your GP. And I think, I defend a lot of what the Blair government did, but I think one thing they didn't do enough on was investing in public services infrastructure to ensure that there weren't community tensions and there were enough GP places and so on and so on.
Well, I mean, I saw that Boris Johnson had said that migration was too high, and I just thought, oh, please, Boris.
I know, Boris, come on.
Everyone, you can't say that. Boris Johnson, of course, let it go sky high. Yeah. But anyway, we'll leave that there. We'll come back to you both. Ben Habib there, former Deputy Leader of Reform UK, and Pete Edwards, former editor of Labour List. Now, for all the best analysis and opinion on that story and more, you can go to the website. We're on gbnews.com.